Hey everyone, my name is Eric Hopkins, aka JEL. Welcome back to the Dragon's Den. Thank you guys for your patience this week. I know the AEW recap and the WWE recap, which you can see on the channel today as well. I know they were a couple days behind because I was off on vacation a little bit with my family following the 4th of July weekend there. So I took a little bit of an extended time off, but I'm back and we'll be having some videos tonight as well as a podcast. So check that out tonight as well. But I wanted to get into AEW this week. So without any further ado, let's do that. I thought I'd start off with Rampage last week. We got the semifinal matchup between Mariah May and Hikaru Shida. I thought it was a very entertaining match between these two young ladies. They're clearly going to be pushing Mariah May, which is going to be a little bit of the focus of the show here today. But yeah, good to see Mariah May get the victory here as she's going to be heading into the finals against Willow Nightingale on this last week's AEW Dynamite, which we're going to get into. But yeah, fun time all the way around here on Rampage. But I thought I'd mention Rampage just a little bit here, just because Rampage gets a little bit of a bad rap. Collision does a little bit too at the same time, because, I mean, although Collision's been doing a much better job of integrating big storylines a little bit, kind of leading into Dynamite, which is where the majority of the storytelling in AEW does happen, which kind of affects Collision and Rampage's ratings, in my opinion. But at the same time, you know, Rampage and Collision is mostly viewed as just the wrestling shows. However, Mariah May and stuff they're doing with Toni Storm and Christian Cage, especially on Collision, is kind of right now is the guy leading that show for the most part, because you don't really see him on Dynamite nearly as often. But yeah, there is storylines that are going on Collision, especially, but Rampage sometimes gets a little bit of the short end of the stick. I've still kind of been advocating a little bit that I'd like to see Rampage become a little bit of a woman's only 1 hour show every week. I think that could be a lot of fun, especially with the talent that they have on the women's roster. They could definitely do a whole show with just the women. I think that could maybe even edge WWE to do something similar at some point. But especially with the amount of talent they have. Now, I understand you want to get the women on the weekly shows like Raw, SmackDown, as well as Dynamite and Collision too. But at the same time, you're only giving them a couple matches or a couple segments on those shows. To give them their own show, I think could be a lot of fun. We'll have to see if they end up doing that. But yeah, so I just thought I'd mention Rampage a little bit there. I thought AEW Collision this week was actually pretty well booked, all things considered, especially headlined by a big semifinal matchup in the men's side of the Owen Hart Cup Tournament brackets here, with Adam Hangman Page, who made his return last week on Dynamite, defeating Jeff Jarrett, going up against Jay White here. That match on paper looked outstanding. Didn't quite live up to the hype to me because there was a little bit of stuff going on here and there. But at the same time, I thought it was a lot of fun. Collision started out with MJF coming out with the Y Max Y promo that is kind of, you know, synonymous with pro wrestling when you turn on a babyface like MJF did there, and wiping out Daniel Garcia. I don't think Daniel Garcia is injured per se, even though Will Ospreay said on Dynamite he was, but I think that may be mostly storyline. But it could be a little bit of time for Daniel Garcia to take some time off between now and All In. But I think we're going to be getting Daniel Garcia versus MJF at All In. Now, I was a little bit wrong on that one. I was predicting that MJF versus Will Ospreay would be happening at All In for the International Championship, but that does not appear to be the case after this week's shows that were taped for sure, which we'll be getting into a little bit of that as we go on here. But MJF said in his promo that he was never going to wrestle Daniel Garcia at All In, which pretty much tells you that's what's going to happen. But and of course, it was not so much a promo of why he did what he did to Garcia, but he was just blaming the fans about how he let them in. He let Adam Cole in, and now when he came back, he said it was all going to be hate, hate, hate. And you know, they kind of, you know, re-showed the segment when he returned about how he showed off the tattoo and things like that he got for AEW, but now he's back to just hating everybody, which is MJF at his peak and at his best, no doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, just blaming the fans is kind of cliche, really, at this point. However, MJF doing it on the microphone, I think, is absolutely outstanding. And of course, MJF is back to wearing the $5,000 suits and everything that makes him look like $1 million, a la Ric Flair way back in the day. So, yeah, MJF is obviously, as a heel, is going to be the best version of MJF that you can possibly get in AEW for sure. So yeah, looking forward to see where they go. Obviously, they got a big matchup for Dynamite 250, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. But yeah, this is definitely a scathing promo from MJF, but it was a great way to start off Collision, and hopefully to help Collision a little bit. You got to get more of your bigger stars from Dynamite on Collision a little bit. I know you like to have Collision to be a little bit more about the wrestling, but at the same time, some of the guys on Collision, some people don't really care to see as much. It'd be better to have your big talents on both shows, unless you're going to split the rosters. If you're going to split the rosters and have a couple different brands like WWE does, I'm perfectly fine with that too at this point, with the big talent roster pool that you have in AEW. But otherwise, I think it's good to get guys like MJF on there here every now and then. One of the bigger things that happened on AEW Collision this week, we got Marco Stunt surprising the AEW crowd when he kind of answered a challenge by Jack Perry. But of course, Jack Perry ends up pretty much destroying poor little Marco Stunt here, his former Jurassic Express teammate here, which made it for a nice little cameo appearance here by the little Marco Stunt for sure. But there was a couple instances on a clothesline and like a big javelin like throw into one of the middle turnbuckles, which looked like it was absolutely brutal for Marco Stunt. So this is a great way to build Jack Perry a little bit to further his reign as TNT champion, heading into potentially Blood and Guts coming up in a few weeks here for sure, and obviously to further the Elite storyline of their dominance in AEW. We had a matchup with Riho versus Lady Frost, where Riho did win, and they were potentially setting up a feud between her and Serena Deeb. Unfortunately, it appears that during that match, Riho apparently fractured her arm, so that is pretty much going to put the kibosh on the whole Serena Deeb feud for the time being, which sucks because I thought Riho versus Serena Deeb would have been a really good feud to be watching for sure, and it also sucks for Serena Deeb too for not being having a storyline to go into just right now. They may have to figure out something else for her to do. So you might not see Serena Deeb for a few weeks for sure. But they got to continue the Serena Deeb thing because Serena Deeb's talked about how she doesn't want to lose, and get buried. So it sounds like they're going to do the best that they can to kind of bring her back as well. But of course, the person that it affects the most is, of course, Riho. I wish her all the best and well wishes and prayers to her. Obviously, a broken arm is no fun to deal with for sure. But hopefully, she'll be back sooner rather than later. We miss Riho. It's been a while since we've seen her. I was hoping to get a chance to see her again, but I think she just come back from injury, and now she's injured again, unfortunately. So, well wishes to her. Hope to see her back in an AEW ring soon. As I said, Christian Cage has kind of been running Collision just a little bit here. Christian Cage wants to revive the Trios Championships after taking them from Jay White and the Bang Bang Gang. Again, just kind of furthering that they want the Trios Championships that are held by the Bang Bang Gang right now, which is going to be a good thing that's going to tie into the main event tonight to kind of give Jay White a little bit of a reason as to why he wasn't going to advance in the Owen Hart Cup Tournament. So, yes, that made all the booking sense in the world, in my opinion, because otherwise, there's no reason that Jay White couldn't beat Adam Hangman Page on any other given night for sure. So, yeah, in a way, I kind of am hoping that the Bang Bang Gang eventually drop the titles to Christian Cage and the Patriarchy here because I would like to see Jay White get pushed a little bit further there. I know a lot of fans have been complaining about Jay White not getting pushed to his talent level. Hopefully, we'll get that sooner rather than later, and potentially the Trios Championship match and potentially All In heading up at the end of August could be the start to that push for Jay White. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, all good things here with this promo. Which, of course, led us to the main event, of course, with Jay White against Adam Hangman Page. As I mentioned, Adam Hangman Page ended up defeating Jay White as Christian Cage speared Jay White in this match and, of course, slid out of the ring and then kind of folded his arms and smiled as Adam Hangman Page then hit the buckshot lariat to get the victory over Jay White. After the match was over, of course, Christian Cage gave the gun salute to Jay White, indicating that he was going to, go after him, obviously, and he's got him in his crosshairs. So, again, further storyline telling there as well, in my opinion. And, of course, it sets up a huge Owen Hart Cup final matchup on Dynamite this week between Adam Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson here. Of course, Hangman Adam Page has got that crazy look in his eye for sure. But we also got a confirmation that Jeff Jarrett wanted to become the enforcer for the upcoming finals in the Owen Hart Cup tournament between Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson. And Christopher Daniels and Tony Khan both agreed and allowed him to do so, as the Owen Hart Cup tournament means a lot to Jeff Jarrett after his friendship with Owen Hart, of course. It also ties into the fact that Jeff Jarrett was defeated by Adam Hangman Page in the round previously. So, yeah, this also makes a lot of sense in that regard. Dynamite, I thought, was a very good show this week. I thought last week's show was pretty much a top 5 of the year. This was a little step down, but nothing bad at all. I thought this was a great show. It's just kind of hard with Dynamite. To me, a lot of times have really good shows. It's kind of hard to rank them for sure. But this week was on par, I thought, in my opinion. Dynamite, I feel like, especially has found a good balance between great pro wrestling and stellar storytelling. They're starting to interweave a lot of these stories, entering their busiest time of the year and their biggest show of the year. All in is essentially AEW's WrestleMania. And going into that big show, I think they're finally starting to hit on all cylinders, heading into some of those big matches they've got for that, as well as celebrating some milestones, which we're going to get into in just a minute, as well as setting up Blood and Guts in 2 weeks as well. Obviously, on the show, we had Bryan Danielson versus Adam Hangman Page to start the show in the first match of the show, which we'll get into in just a second. So, yeah, this was all great. Will Ospreay opened up Dynamite with an impassioned promo as he sat on the turnbuckle that MJF ended up tombstoning and hurting Daniel Garcia off of. Will Ospreay talked about how Daniel Garcia is still at home now with no feeling in his arms and no idea when he's going to come back to pro wrestling, if he even does come back to pro wrestling. So Will Ospreay was doing a great job of selling the whole, Daniel Garcia injury. I think it's a storyline. I don't think he's hurt. But he's definitely not hurt from the storyline. If he's hurt minorly or some other injury that I'm unaware of, that's potentially a thing. But I think it's mostly just to sell the storyline, and Garcia is going to come back and face MJF at AEW All In. But like I said, I was wrong on this one. I thought Will Ospreay versus MJF was going to be a thing at All In. Sounds like we're going to be getting that next week, as there was a spot here where Will Ospreay tried to call out MJF. MJF's music played, and kind of a reversal of what happened on Collision. On Collision, MJF called out Will Ospreay. MJF, knowing full well that Ospreay was not there, he played Ospreay's music and, of course, got the crowd to go crazy, and then MJF kind of laughed it off. In this case, Will Ospreay probably knew that MJF was in the building, but MJF played the music instead to kind of get under Ospreay's skin, as we got a bit of a promo from MJF on the Titantron. So, yeah, and, of course, they set up the match for next week on AEW Dynamite 250, which is a huge milestone for Dynamite. There are only, I believe, 38 shows away to matching WCW Nitro's overall record of 288 shows, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, this is a big-time show. And so, even though I thought this match was going to take place at AEW All In, it makes sense to do it on this Dynamite too, because obviously this is a big show celebrating, quarter of the way to 1,000 episodes. So this is a big show heading into their biggest show of the year of All In. So I understand why Tony Khan decided to book this the way he did, and I have no problem with it, to be honest with you. Yes, it is a pay-per-view level match, but I'm sure Tony Khan is going to do everything in his power to make this 250th episode a pay-per-view level Dynamite. So I think it's going to be outstanding, leading into blood and guts and all that sort of stuff as well. So this should be a great match. At first, when they announced it, I thought, well, there's no way they're just going to give this away, are they? But then once I realized the 250 stuff, well, they're not going to announce this and not deliver. AEW does not do this thing where, oh, we got a match and we're going to not deliver that match. They always deliver what they advertise, so you got to give them credit there. So this should be a lot of fun. It's going to open the show this coming week on Dynamite. So yeah, can't wait for this. It's going to be an outstanding match. I don't know. This could go either way. Potentially MJF wins the International Championship. Maybe MJF drops it to Daniel Garcia, and that's how Garcia gets it. Or Will Ospreay against the winner of the four-way in this show. I think that's probably where they're going to end up going. Ospreay probably defeats MJF, maybe with the help of Daniel Garcia setting up Daniel Garcia's return going into All In. We'll have to see how this goes. But yeah, I think if I'm a bet man, Will Ospreay retains the title here. As I mentioned, the first match of the show was Bryan Danielson versus Adam Hangman Page in the finals of the Owen Hart Cup Tournament here. Big time match that lasted through a couple commercial breaks. A lot of fun. Great match between these two gentlemen here, no doubt about it. Adam Hangman Page kind of went a little the heel tactics there, taking off his belt and whipping the American Dragon here, obviously blooding him up and all sorts of that good stuff for sure. Even led to a moment where Jeff Jarrett got in the ring and tried to get him to stop using the belt. And then he took his shirt off and revealed he had a referee shirt as he was the special enforcer for the match. And Bryan Danielson ended up rolling up Adam Hangman Page here, surprisingly, to defeat Hangman Page, because again, I was wrong on this one. As I mentioned in my WWE recap, which I was wrong about a few things on WWE this week as well. I will take credit when I'm wrong on this one. I was wrong about Ospreay and MJF being at All In. And in this case, I was wrong about potentially being Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland 3 at All In as well. That's not going to happen, which I think we're going to get a bit of a payoff still in a couple weeks at Blood and Guts, which we'll get into in just a minute. But it makes all the sense in the world, too. They initially set up Bryan Danielson to go against Swerve Strickland and potentially win the AEW World Championship here in his final year before he retires as a full-time wrestler at the end of the year. So I understand why they decided to have Bryan Danielson win this tournament. It's great for him in his final year as well. And Hangman Page is still going to get his hands on Swerve Strickland, as will be revealed later on in the show. But yes, this makes a lot of sense. Great match between these guys. Kind of gave it that unpredictability factor because you didn't know exactly which way it was going to go, and it went the right way, in my opinion. So good to see this all the way around. So yeah, congratulations to Bryan Danielson being another champion here with the Owen Hart Cup Championship here. I would like to see these belts, especially since now it's a little different than the King and Queen of the Ring in WWE, where the King and Queen of the Ring tournament winners go on to SummerSlam for a title opportunity. Now, this is kind of the same situation with the Owen Hart Cup Tournament. However, in this case, with the belts, I don't know if you want them to wear it all year round, but maybe turn the belts in at All In to kind of because this is their Money in the Bank briefcase. They won the opportunity with these belts. You carry it for a month and then you turn it in when you get the championship opportunity at All In. So yes, Bryan Danielson will, like I said, officially challenge Swerve Strickland at All In. That should be a great match to cap off the show for the AEW World Championship. No doubt about it. The aforementioned Swerve Strickland, the AEW World Champion, then came out following the Danielson victory, and he basically stated that he looks forward to seeing Bryan Danielson at All In for sure. But he also mentioned that Blood and Guts is coming up in 2 weeks' time, and if Team AEW is going to be going against Team Elite, he said he's going to take the lead here, and he's going to join Team AEW as the AEW World Champion possibly should. So yeah, it's now going to be Swerve Strickland and Mark Briscoe. And we find out a little bit more about who could be potentially joining both sides a little bit later on, which we'll get into. But yeah, this is great to see Swerve Strickland going to be involved in one of the bigger matches in the next few weeks as the World Heavyweight Champion on AEW programming. It makes all the sense in the world for him to join Team AEW, so I'm looking forward to that. But Swerve Strickland also mentioned that Kazuchika Okada is someone who's he's been wanting to wrestle and get involved with here because obviously he has issues with him as well. So another pay-per-view level match that is going to be coming on Dynamite 250 next week. So again, everybody was complaining, well, why is Tony Khan just giving these matches away for free? Again, this is great because, you know, Okada and Strickland are going to have a banger of a match. It's champion versus champion. I'm sure there'll be stuff that will further the storylines going into All In with the Elite and, of course, Blood and Guts the following week. So that makes more sense. We'll have the Elite versus, Team AEW with both of these guys on each respective teams for sure. So, yeah, we're going to get a big blow-off heading into that as well, a big build-up at the end of Dynamite 250, setting up Blood and Guts. And, of course, like I said, Danielson could get involved, or we can find out who Okada is going to be wrestling at All In. All sorts of good stuff that they've got going on here. All this interweaving storylines, much like WWE's doing. AEW is starting to do that much more as well. I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that AEW has hired some former WWE writers, or maybe they're just starting to kind of find their footing a little bit here after some of the struggles that they've had. But AEW is on the upward trend, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it going into some big shows coming up here within the next month. After this, we had the Stampede Street Fight between Chris Jericho and Samoa Joe. Yeah, this whole thing was a lot of fun, including what looked to be plastic horseshoes. I don't know if they were real or not. They may have been plastic, but either way, plastic Legos hurt just as much too. So this probably still didn't feel good. It seems like we got like a gimmick going on now. Like, what can we pull out of the black bag we pull out from underneath the ring? Is it thumbtacks? Is it Legos? Is it dice? And now we've got horseshoes. So it seems like they keep coming up with different things. AEW and WWE both coming up with different things of what we can do. We've had glass. We've had all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I kind of like the gimmick. What's in the bag? So maybe that'll become like a running thing. But yeah, I like that all things considered for sure. But of course, this all kind of ended up, I had one nitpick on it because this all ended up with, obviously Jericho and the Learning Tree with the Redwood, Big Bill, and the Bad Apple, Brian Keith, attacking Joe, and of course putting him on a forklift pallet, and Jericho ran the forklift through a drywall piece of wall there, and of course it kind of takes out Samoa Joe out of the equation a little bit here. It was a big injury angle for Samoa Joe, and they put him in an ambulance and stuff afterwards. And of course, so my one nitpick on it though was they've been setting up this whole team with Shibata and Hook and Samoa Joe. I understand, unless I'm missing something, I understand where Hook wasn't going to be able to make the save here because obviously Hook took a fireball to the face last week, as well as going through a big table spot as well at the end of that. But at the same time, I don't remember Shibata potentially, getting hurt to not make the save. Now, they may have mentioned it on commentary. Maybe I missed it, that potentially maybe Shibata had some like visa issues or passport issues going into Canada. That may have been the issue. If that's the case, totally understandable. But I if they said it, I missed it. So just bear that in mind. But so a part of me was like, well, where's Samoa Joe's friends? But if those are all true, it makes 100% sense. While Joe had to go here on his own against the Learning Tree stable here for sure. But this was all done, in my opinion, to set up Samoa Joe's absence, because it's been reported that Samoa Joe will be returning for the new Twisted Metal Season 2, where he was playing the role of Sweet Tooth in that series. So if that's the case, he's been written off so he could go film that, and maybe Hook and Shibata can kind of pick up the slack in the meantime against the Learning Tree, kind of like the Learning Tree had to get by without Brian Keith there for a while because Brian Keith had an injured arm. So, and then maybe once Samoa Joe gets that all done and filmed, which we don't know exactly how long that'll take, it may only take a shorter period of time. We'll just have to wait and see. And Joe could come back maybe by All In if that's the case, and maybe do a six man match, a trios match at the biggest pay-per-view of the year. We'll have to wait and see. But at the same time, I think this is maybe possibly why it's been done. So if that's the case, it makes total sense. And in that case, I see what they were doing there for sure. We had Mercedes Moné come out to kind of get her proper celebration that she felt like she didn't get and was interrupted by Britt Baker last week. She has extra security out there to keep Britt Baker away from her so she can celebrate her double championship win at Forbidden Door. Mercedes Moné said, "If you did face me in the ring, Britt Baker, I would leave you with way more than a couple of herniated discs and a stroke. I would leave you for dead, bitch." So this is definitely ramping up to become more and more personal, which of course brought out Britt Baker, and she fought off some security guards that Mercedes Moné had, and of course she ran away. Mercedes Moné as she took off through the crowd for sure. So again, we're definitely getting this match at All In. I think it's going to be a great thing to see. And it's good to see Britt Baker back healthy and ready to go here. So yeah, hopefully this will be a lot of fun here. But Mercedes Moné also mentioned that to celebrate AEW Dynamite 250 next week in Little Rock, Arkansas, she is going to have an open challenge for her TBS championship. The challenge is open to any woman on the AEW roster except for Britt Baker. So another big, open challenge match added to 250. So that makes a lot of sense. Again, so we're building up this AEW Dynamite 250 card with now 3 solid matches to sell that show. Could we potentially get the return of Jamie Hayter here? That's just speculation. I have no idea. I don't know how she would play into the whole Britt Baker, Mercedes Moné thing. That could be great. Or, maybe Jamie Hayter comes back and goes after the winner of the women's championship match at All In. We'll have to wait and see, maybe. But at the same time, you could add her into this and make it a triple threat for sure. We'll just have to wait and see what they go with it. But yeah, I hope to see her back sooner rather than later too. But yeah, we'll see what happens here. There's also rumors going around that Natalya may make an AEW debut here, especially since it was in Canada. Was not to be the case, but yeah. So we'll see where this goes. But yeah, we could potentially get a surprise appearance from some young lady to challenge Mercedes Moné for the TBS Championship next week, which I assume Mercedes will obviously retain heading into the biggest show of the year. We had the Global Glory 4-way match here for the #1 contendership for the International Championship here with Claudio Castagnoli, Kyle Fletcher, Pac, and Tomohiro Ishii, who I guess is going to be spending a little bit of time in AEW here moving forward, as he's not participating in some of the New Japan stuff right now. So this was a banger of a match. All 4 of these guys are absolutely outstanding. These guys put on a show, no doubt about it. But in the end, Pac gets the victory here, and he is now the #1 contender for the AEW International Championship that currently is held by Will Ospreay. So again, it sounds like an All In. Instead of Ospreay and MJF, which we're getting next week, it's going to be Will Ospreay against Pac, which again is going to be an outstanding match, no doubt about that. As Pac even went on to say in a promo afterwards, he will not be denied his Wembley moment, his all-in moment. So again, they're kind of taking a little bit of a page out of WWE's book here a little bit. As they always say in WWE, to have a WrestleMania moment. That's always their verbiage that they like to use. So in this case, it's a Wembley moment or an all-in moment. They're trying to build it and sell it as a fact that All In is their WrestleMania now moving forward. It's the show that started out AEW. They had their biggest show of all time with AEW All In last year, potentially even in wrestling history. That's debatable depending on who you listen to and talk to and all that sort of stuff. But either way, it was a great big show and one of the biggest of all time in pro wrestling. So yes, it looks like Pac versus Will Ospreay is the direction. Again, these all-in matches and card is building out more and more and more with multiple weeks ahead of it. So I'm excited to see what they're doing. They're doing an excellent job of that, in my opinion. After that, we had Adam Hangman Page being approached by Renee Paquette, and Adam Hangman Page was completely ignoring Renee until Renee just kind of almost snapped at him. He was like, "I demand some respect around here," and Page just kind of ignored her and banged on the door, which was the Elite's doorway, and Okada answered the door, and obviously Hangman Page wanted to talk to the Bucks, but Okada wasn't really having it either, so there's some tension there already, and of course the Bucks, was like, "Yo, what can we do for you, Hangman?" Because obviously you turned us down for blood and guts before. We scratched your back and you didn't scratch ours. And even though Hangman doesn't want anything to do with the Elite from the appearance of things, now that Hangman has lost his title opportunity against Swerve at All In by losing the Owen Hart Cup Finals against Bryan Danielson, Hangman Adam Page knows now that the only way to get a hold of Swerve Strickland is in the blood and guts match that Swerve Strickland earlier in the night said that he was going to be a part of. So now he just says, "I'll do it." Because the Bucks were trying to recruit him to be in Blood and Guts with the Elite to, complete the 5-man team on that side of things. And so now Adam Hangman Page is begrudgingly siding with the Bucks. So that, again, is a whole nother element. During that match in particular, could Adam Hangman Page turn on the Elite? Obviously, there's no love lost there right now. But yeah, this makes all the sense in the world, in my opinion. So I can't wait to see where all these story elements, take place and go into this blood and guts match, because obviously with all these different storylines in that match alone, it's going to add a lot of great drama to it. As obviously this was the 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 graphic for the blood and guts match last week. This week we've added Adam Hangman Page to the Elite, and Mark Briscoe has now got Swerve Strickland being added to that as well. And before the end of this show, we also got a surprise appearance from Darby Allin, who we've not seen for quite some time here, since Dynasty, I believe. And now he's made his return. He laid out Brandon Cutler in the back and said, "The Elite, you thought this was over. Dynamite 250 is just getting started." So next week, he's made a promise to show up at Dynamite as well. And I fully expect that since he attacked Brandon Cutler, that he's going to be added to the Blood and Guts match as well on Team AEW with Swerve and Mark Briscoe. So that'll leave two guys left open for the Blood and Guts match on the Team AEW side. We'll see where that goes. They've been kind of teasing like maybe the Acclaim, since they've kind of got this tag team match coming up with the Young Bucks, potentially at AEW All In. I think that's where they're going with that. But yeah, that could very well be it. Or maybe they can get a couple other heavy hitters in there as well to kind of tie into some of this as well. So maybe we'll get Darby Allin versus Jack Perry. Obviously, Darby Allin is not, forgotten the fact that they hung him upside down at Dynasty and completely destroyed him. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of great things going on here with this whole storyline with the Elite craving power, as it were, in AEW moving forward. So yeah, I think this is going to be great. It's going to be a fun War Games-esque match here in AEW. So I can't wait to see this in a couple weeks. And of course, the biggest long-term storyline that they've been having here in AEW for outside of maybe Swerve and Hangman is, of course, Mariah May and Toni Storm. But before we get to that, the finals of the Owen Hart women's side of the bracket here with Willow Nightingale and Mariah May were in the finals here. And I want to give a shout out to Willow Nightingale, showing some respect to Owen Hart here, wearing an homage to Owen Hart's Old Danger. Enough is enough and it's time for a change. Owen Hart ring gear here. So I'm excited to see that. And Willow Nightingale is obviously awesome for sure. And she had a good match here with Mariah May, in my opinion, no doubt about it. It was a real hard fought match here, but at the end of the night, Mariah May gets the roll-up victory here. But after the match was over is where the big storyline took place. Toni Storm was obviously congratulating Mariah May on her victory, as she appeared to be very happy for her, despite the fact that that meant that Toni Storm would have to defend her title at All In against Mariah May. Mariah May ran up to the trophy and grabbed the Owen Hart Cup Championship belt and immediately turned around and just laid out Toni Storm here. Mariah May even took out Luther and sent him flying off the stage through a couple tables there as well. And of course, the show ended with a very bloody Toni Storm being assaulted by Mariah May, using one of Toni Storm's heels as well, and hitting her in the forehead with it and grinding her forehead and getting that blood to gush out here. I'm not going to lie. We all expected Mariah May, and I've been saying it for weeks, to eventually this whole thing to blow up and they're going to have a big match at All In. I did not expect the turn to happen this week on Dynamite immediately after getting the title opportunity against Toni Storm. But it was great to see. I was completely shocked by it, and it definitely made me mark out a bit. That was great. I was expecting maybe we could go on, we're going to be friends, heading in. We're going to be the best woman win going into All In. And then, of course, that was maybe where the turn was going to happen, and Mariah May would beat her and go heel or something to that effect. But it looks as if they're going to play Toni Storm up as the babyface in this particular segment here. But yes, this is interesting to me. I really like what they did here. Great way to end the show, and it was a great go-home segment, no doubt about that. So leading into that, we now have officially two matches set for All In. Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland for the AEW World Championship, as well as, of course, Mariah May versus Toni Storm, timeless Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship. And like I said, Will Ospreay versus Pac, Daniel Garcia versus MJF. We probably got some stuff with the Elite as well as Britt Baker versus Mercedes Moné. So again, the card is shaping up great here. Great end to Dynamite, in my opinion, setting up that feud between these two lovely young ladies. So I can't wait to see that. I think the show in All In at London is going to be great at Wembley Stadium as well. But what do you guys think? Are you guys excited for AEW right now, what they're doing? Do you kind of feel like me? They've kind of finally hit that nice balance between good storytelling and great professional wrestling. That's just my opinion, though. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And until my next week's AEW recap, guys, take care and God bless.